welcome to IAS project. In this video, let's talk about society during later Vedic period. The most important aspect of later Vedic society was Chatur Varna system. Chatur Varna system can also be called as fourfold division of society. It simply means that the later Vedic society was divided into four Varnas. They are nothing but Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, or we can say Shudras. We have already talked about Varna. Varna basically originated in the Rig Vedic period. In our Rig Vedic lecture, we have talked about Purusha and different body parts of Purusha. For example, Brahmins came from the mouth of Purusha, Kshatriyas from the shoulders or arms, Vaishyas from the thighs and Shudras from the feet. And such kind of division of society was mainly done towards the end of Rig Vedic period. We have already talked about this in early Vedic period. We have also learnt in our early Vedic lectures that Shudras were not established as a separate Varna during Rig Vedic period. However, during the later Vedic period, the Chatur Varna system came to be established thoroughly. That is why in the later Vedic society, there were four distinct Varnas: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. Now let's talk about each of these Varnas. Kshatriyas were called as Rajanyas. Rajanyas simply means the ruling class. Moreover, we also have to understand that this Chatur Varna system or the fourfold division of society was basically a hierarchical classification of Varnas. What do we mean by hierarchical classification? Hierarchical classification simply means that we are basically ranking these Varnas. At the top we have Brahmanas, then Kshatriyas, then Vaishyas and finally we have Shudras. There were also some other people who were called as Avarna, and these Avarna people were mainly out of the classification of Chatur Varna system. Please remember this also. This is also important from the point of view of Indian society in GS paper 1. And these Avarna people were basically the people who were outside the influence of Aryan culture. For example, if we talk about today's situation, then scheduled tribes are basically considered as Avarna category, which have been mentioned in later Vedic literature. Alright, I told you that at the top we have Brahmanas, but this is not always the case. In most of the cases, Brahmanas occupied highest status in the Varna system. However, they were closely contested by Kshatriyas also, because Brahmanas were mainly priests, but Kshatriyas were ruling class, or we can say they were warrior class. So since they were ruling class, they contained considerable power. That is why Kshatriyas closely contested Brahmanas for the highest status in Varna system. But in case you have to use this information in mains exam, then you will consider Brahmanas at the top of the table and Shudras and Avarnas at the bottom of the table. You won't be requiring this knowledge directly in mains exam for history, but you will be requiring this knowledge for the purpose of Indian society in GS paper 1. So Brahmanas or Kshatriyas were generally at the top of the table, but Shudras were always at the bottom of the table. That is why we can say Shudras were the most handicapped of the four Varna system, which means that Shudras were at a disadvantage compared to the other three Varnas. We will talk more about these disadvantages in the coming slides. Also, in the later Vedic period, many subcastes based on the occupation also appeared. For example, let's say there is a person who is making pots and there is another person who is making iron implements. Then what happened was all the pot making people or the potters were placed into a specific caste. In Hindi, I think it is called as Kumhar. So similarly, all the people who were making iron implements were also placed into a different caste. For example, in today's terms, it is called as, I think, Luhar. So basically, all this originated in the later Vedic period. Depending on the occupation, many castes also developed. Now you have to understand what is the difference between Varna and caste also. Varna is not caste and caste is not Varna. Caste mainly means jati. So depending on the occupation of people, people have been divided into different castes. But Varna is not based on the occupation. We already know that initially Varna actually meant color. At the start of early Vedic period and even before early Vedic period, there were mainly two Varnas. They were nothing but Arya Varna and Dasyu Varna. So fair skinned people were called as Arya Varna, whereas dark skinned people were called as Dasyu Varna. And during the Rigvedic period or the early Vedic period, Varna's meaning changed. So between 1500 BCE and 1000 BCE, Varna came to be known as the three types of people. They were basically priest class, warrior class, and finally there was common people. So during most part of the early Vedic period, Shudras were not existing. Shudras only came to be established at the end of early Vedic period. So I hope the difference between Varna and caste is very clear to you. Moreover, Brahmanas also got even more importance in the later Vedic period. This is because the importance of sacrifices also increased further in the later Vedic period. So obviously, if sacrifices were more important in later Vedic period, then Brahmanas would also be more important, because Brahmanas were the main people who were conducting these sacrifices. At this point, we also have to understand the difference between Brahmanas and priests. Initially, Brahmanas were actually one of the 16 classes of priests. So during the Rigvedic period, there was priest class. And within this priest class, there were basically 16 type of groups, or let's say 16 type of subclasses. And Brahmanas were basically only one subclass within the priest class. So this was the situation during early Vedic period. But what happened was the power of Brahmanas within these 16 priest classes increased. And by the time of later Vedic period, Brahmanas emerged as the most important class within all the 16 classes of priests. So this is one important aspect that is specific to Aryan culture in India. We already know that Aryan culture was there not only in India. For example, it was there in Iran also. We have talked about some of the common elements in Aryan culture in India and Iran, like consumption of soma drink, fire altars and fire sacrifices. So many such kind of common cultural elements were there in the Aryans present in Iran and also Aryans present in India. However, the rise of Brahmanas as well as the rigid Chatur Varna system is unique to India. This is also very important because such kind of development did not happen with Aryans who were there in Iran. That is why the development of rigid Chatur Varna system and the rise of importance of Brahmanas can be credited to the non-Aryan elements that were present in India at that time. These non-Aryan elements were not present in Iran. That is why Brahmanas and Chatur Varna system did not develop in Iran. Although in Iran also Vedic people were there and there were many Vedic culture elements like soma drink consumption, fire altars and fire sacrifices and many other things. So what was the function of Brahmanas? Brahmanas mainly conducted rituals and sacrifices. They also officiated at festivals associated with agricultural occupations. For example, we know that by the end of later Vedic period, iron plowshare was already invented. So what happened was, before tilling of the land using iron plowshare, Brahmana used to come and then he used to bless the plow and bless the activity. So such kind of functions were also done by Brahmanas. Please like and subscribe. You can download this presentation from our Telegram channel. The name of the channel is IAS Project. The link for this channel has been given in the description section below. Thank you.